We're going to kick off the first of today's keynote speakers. I'd like to introduce to the stage Mr. David Levine from Disney. David, you're very welcome.
Hi, how are you? Well, thank you very much for inviting me here. It's really fantastic to be here. Fantastic to be with all of you in a beautiful location like this. It's my first time in this area of the country. And thanks to the Jam Media guys for inviting me. They asked me to come and talk to you a little bit about my journey in the entertainment industry. And so my name is David Levine, and I've been very lucky to work with some of the most colorful characters in the business. So along the way, there have been 3 key lessons that I've learned that I wanted to share with you to hopefully help you as you move forward in your careers and pursue your dreams in the animation industry. So to do this, I'm going to give you some examples from my own career. And at the end, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And so I'm going to give you a brief snapshot of what I'm going to talk about, what the 3 lessons are going to be. And it's not a workout, but I'm going to ask you to step, to flex, and to act. So, my name's David Levine, and I have a really long title. It's really big. And so what it basically means is that I have 2 jobs. The first job is to oversee the programming strategy, production, and development of the kids' content across the Disney channels across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And so what that basically means is that myself and my team are responsible for getting all of the great content that we get from the United States, all the great animation, live action, original movies, and getting those out to the audiences across about 110 channels across the region. So what that also means is that we also are responsible for producing and acquiring and developing local and regional shows to help complement all of that content and create great connections with our audiences. So the second job, the GM part of that job, is to oversee the 3 Disney Kids channels here in the UK and in Ireland. We reach about 11 million homes, and we're carried on Sky, UPC, Virgin Media, and a few others. So as you can imagine, my days are very, very busy. I go to lots of meetings, but it's also a lot of fun. So how did I get here? So when I was a kid, I was interested in 4 things: comic books, Star Wars, Dungeons and Dragons, and television. And as you'll see how my career went, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. So my mom bought me my first comic book when I was about 7. My dad waited in the queue with me in a freezing car, waiting for Empire Strikes Back to come out. And I watched a ton of TV as a kid. I watched everything from cartoons to LA Law, which is an old drama about being a lawyer in Los Angeles. And it was actually one of the things that inspired me to become a lawyer, believe it or not. I went to university, went to law school, passed the bar, that's my dad. And I spent my law school career wanting to be a prosecutor. I took all sorts of criminal justice courses. But at the end, couldn't find a job. It wasn't a great time. I was lucky though. I wound up meeting a guy that worked for DC Comics, and he told me that he would help me try to get a job at DC Comics in the legal department. So I basically had taken 2 courses related to intellectual property in law school, 1 copyright course and 1 trademark course. And I recalibrated my resume a little bit in my cover letter, and I sent it to DC Comics. And I figured, well, I'll get the most mileage as I can out of these things, so, well, I'll send it to Marvel Comics too. And turned out, they actually kept it on file. And they gave me a call just a couple months later. And they had an open position. And the interviewer told me that they either wanted an experienced paralegal or an inexperienced lawyer. And guess what? I was a very, very inexperienced lawyer. And it wasn't a full lawyer's position. It was a legal manager position, and it was very far from a full lawyer salary, I can tell you that. But this gets to the first lesson. And it was something that my partner at the time told me, and it's one of the best pieces of advice. I've used it many times in my career. And that is to be prepared to take a step back, to move forward, and your passion will push you through. And so while the job itself wasn't fully what I was credited for, it was a way in, and it was a way for me to get my foot in the door. And although it wasn't a full lawyer's position to start, I loved comic books, I loved Marvel, and it was literally a dream to go to work every day. So a couple months in, I get a call from the prosecutor's office in the Bronx. They say they've got some positions open. Would I like to come in? What? I got free comic books every Tuesday. I had my own office. I had Spider-Man on my business card. No, not gonna happen. So my time at Marvel was great, and it started out on a high. At the time, the company was hitting new heights in the stock market. But unfortunately, overexpansion and the decline of the trading card and the comic book markets actually led to Marvel having to file for bankruptcy in December of 1996. And it's hard to imagine today, with the amazing success of Marvel, that it was in such a state, but it was, unfortunately. And while I was there, I learned a great deal. Learned all about licensing, about internet law. It was just when the internet was taking off, contracts, and even learned a lot about bankruptcy law. But all of that wound up becoming a little too chaotic for me. And as much as I loved Spider-Man, X-Men, Captain America, and the Avengers, it was time to move on. So I moved from Marvel to a small entertainment company, appropriately called the Itsy Bitsy Entertainment Company. And it was a licensing, merchandising, and distribution company. I was hired as the in-house lawyer, and I was responsible for doing all of the distribution, all of the licensing deals. And what Itsy Bitsy did was it represented international production companies. We were based in New York, and we represented primarily British production companies in getting the content sold into North American and South American broadcasters, and also signing up the licensees. So once I got there, I learned that this little company had a very big ace up its sleeve. It had a property with 4 little alien babies that you might know as the Teletubbies. There we are. Uh-oh. So I would imagine you guys are maybe just a little too old to have actually watched Teletubbies growing up. No? Woof, I feel old now. Okay. It's all right. I've been doing this for over 20 years. It's okay. All right, so it was an incredible ride. It was insane to join the company at this point. I had started on a Monday, and by Friday, began negotiations on a multi-million-dollar deal with Hasbro as the master toy licensee. And prior to that, I had only negotiated a couple of small licensing deals, and it was sink or swim at the deep end of the pool. And I paddled my hands as hard as I could. The success of the Teletubbies in the UK fueled the success in the US and Canada and South America. It was an incredible time. I was 27 years old. I found myself negotiating against major kids broadcasters like PBS, Canada's YTV, Discovery Kids in Latin America, TV Globo from Brazil, and then product licensees and partners like McDonald's and Hasbro and Microsoft and Burger King. So all these really big companies. And it was a great time. We had a lot of fun, and I made friendships that last until this day. I don't know where Joan is. She's somewhere here. But my colleague Joan Lambert and I worked very closely together all those years. And it was there that I began to learn the second key lesson that's guided me in my career. And that is to learn to flex your communication style. For the first time, I was dealing not only with Americans, and I had our British clients like Ragdoll, but I also was negotiating with people all around the world. And I was beginning to learn that from a cultural point of view, I needed to better understand the people on the other end of the phone calls, or the faxes in those days. I don't know if you guys know what a fax is, but we used to use them. At the time, my role was primarily that of an advocate, of a negotiator. And at the time, that essentially required only a certain set of skills. And it wasn't until my joining Disney that I would really understand the meaning of learning to flex my communication style. And I got to Disney by way of working directly for Ragdoll. I moved from Itsy Bitsy to work directly for Ragdoll to open up their New York office and help launch the next series that Ann Wood created, Booba. Yeah, oh, I got some fans. There we go. I heard it. Awesome. So my role at the time had expanded to not only doing legal work, but also business affairs and development. And I also was responsible at the time for actually doing the TV sales. So I was actually doing the sales and meeting with the broadcasters. And that sales process for Booba was incredibly exciting. Not only did I talk to my good friends at PBS that had bought Teletubbies, but I formed relationships and connections with all the commercial broadcasters, so Nickelodeon, Discovery, and Disney. And eventually, we wound up selling Booba to all the licensees and the broadcasters that signed up for Teletubbies, including PBS. And it was great to get back in the ring on the legal side and do it again, but this time at pro level. I had already done all of it once on Teletubbies, and to do it all again on Booba was fun, and it was good to do it a bit more with a bit more experience under my belt. And there were additional challenges as well. As the leader of the office, along with my colleague Andrew Kerr, I was a public face of the company, never had done that, and also the sales process itself, all very rewarding. But we got to a point where we sold everything, and there weren't a lot of deals to be done left, and the new show that eventually would come wasn't coming for a while. So I reached out to one of the Disney executives that I had met in the sales process and asked if there were any opportunities over at Disney. And he told me that Rich Ross, who was then the president of Disney Channel, was going to be in New York, and he suggested I do an informational breakfast with Rich. Sure, why not? He's the head of the channels. So I had breakfast with him, and we chatted a bit about what I wanted to do. And he gave me some great advice on how to reposition myself. And in the last 5 minutes, he says, so, we also have this programming position that's open. So, okay, tell me a little bit about it. And he told me basically programming for the channels. Did that sound interesting? I thought, yeah, of course it sounds interesting. Thinking, I don't really know half of what he's talking about right now, but I'm just gonna go with it. And it was really a great opportunity because at the first time, I would be on the other side of the coin. I was used to providing and selling content. I was never a buyer, and I was certainly never a broadcaster. So for some reason, they decided to hire me. And I joined Disney Channel back in 2004, and I started out overseeing programming for Disney Channel, Playhouse Disney, and our Jetix block on ABC Family. And what's ironic, of course, is that all those three brands at the bottom have all transformed into something completely different by now. Playhouse is Disney Junior, Jetix is Disney XD, and ABC Family is a brand called Freeform. I didn't realize it, but there couldn't have been more things changing in my world at once if I had tried. The culture shift and the job shift were tremendous. So moving from the fast pace of New York to the slower but still intense pace of Los Angeles, moving from an office with 6 people and a company of about 80 to an office of 2,000 people and a company bigger than I could imagine, it was huge. And the communication style was completely different. I was used to being a lawyer, a negotiator, arguing my positions, rapid-fire multitasking in a small New York office. And my main partners were my British clients and my British bosses, generally no nonsense, straight to the point, and not really very argumentative. And Ragdoll prided itself on being collaborative, and in retrospect, it was relatively easy to be collaborative when you weren't actually dealing with that many people. Disney was a totally different animal. There was a completely different way of communicating, a bit softer, a bit slower. Collaboration took on a whole new meaning. Working with any decision that you made could affect a part of the company that you knew nothing about. And everything stemmed back to protecting and maintaining the Disney brand. This was and remains the biggest responsibility. Every day, we beam out a channel, we beam out content with Walt's name on it. And in many markets, Disney Channel is the biggest driver of affinity and awareness for Disney. So my first year wasn't that easy, if I was honest, and I needed to figure it out. And thankfully, I had my boss to help me. So they sent me to something that I lovingly refer to as Charm School, and that's my diploma. And it changed my life and my career. I really learned the concept of flexing my communication style. And what that basically means is understanding that while you may appreciate understanding information in a particular way, others may appreciate understanding it and receiving it in a different way, and different than how you transmit it. You have to take the time, or if you don't have the time, learn to pick up on the cues that let you know how people like to receive information, and then adjust your style accordingly. As young animators, you're bound to be working with people who are different than you, not just where they come from, but their communication styles and their backgrounds. And productions these days are a melting pot of many, many different types. And in order to succeed, just to think that you can communicate with the guys or girls next to you in the same way that you communicate all the time with your best friends, that's probably not going to work. So what I was able to do in learning to flex my communication style was not only to work with the folks from LA, but eventually I would wind up working with programmers from all across the world. My domestic role evolved into a global role. And I began to work with the programmers from every channel, every Disney channel across the world, from Buenos Aires to Bombay, from Toronto to Tokyo, and all across Europe. And so the last lesson, almost, is a variation of "you don't ask, you don't get," which is one of my dad's favorite sayings. And this one is a lesson that I acted on throughout my career, and whether it was taking on more responsibilities at Marvel, expanding my legal role at Itsy Bitsy to include acquisitions, or working at Ragdoll to include sales, I constantly stepped up and asked to do more. And my final jump to Disney in London, where I'm based now, where I've been based for the past 2.5 years, happened the same way. So one of my global team that was based in London was leaving, and a couple of other senior executives had also recently left. So I reached out to Trisha Wilbur, who was the head of the channels, and she's also now still the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer for all of Disney in Europe. And I knew Trisha from my programming days for Toon Disney. And I oversaw the programming for Toon Disney, and she was head of ad sales, and Toon Disney was our only ad-supported platform, so we worked pretty closely together. So I asked her if she needed some help, and given all the departures, and she said, yeah, she could use some help. So we set about crafting a job for myself in London, taking me from LA, that would combine all my programming experience, my business leadership skills, and also adding a new area, which was overseeing production and development. And for all the years that I had been in the US, working on acquisitions and co-productions and working in programming, I had always provided input into our production, but I was never directly responsible for a slate, directly responsible for production budgets and output. So what's the third lesson? Wait for it. Not you don't ask, but you don't act, you don't get. And throughout my career, I would continually ask to take on new responsibilities and learn new areas, but I also took actions to propel myself forward. I would stay late nights, over the weekends, and I can tell you that as a leader, it's always the person that's willing to go the extra mile to take on something new that gets my attention. Because learning something new, breaking new ground, that's the most fun. It's the most exciting thing that you can do in any job. So, in my new job, I'm really lucky to work with great teams on the two areas that I oversee. Particularly on the development and production side, we get to work on great new shows like Counterfeit Cat from Wild Seed Studios, Miraculous, Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir from Zagtoon and Toei, just premiered on Disney, and Pyjamas from Team Toe and E1, alongside a slate of live-action productions across the UK, Europe, and as well as Latin America. So it's an animation festival. I got to show you a little animation, right? So I'm going to show you something that hasn't been seen by anybody. So I'm going to introduce to you Counterfeit Cat, a little bit of the show. It's the opening sequence, and then I'm going to share with you a clip. And so the pitch behind Counterfeit Cat is, and this is a show created by Andrew Lavery, produced for us by Wild Seed Studios, is there's a cat named Max who thinks he's really smart. He's the most cautious house cat you can imagine. And he winds up looking after Gark, who is a young alien who has found himself on Earth. He's running away from people who want to find him and use him for their own evil means. But he's young. He doesn't quite understand his powers. And Max decides the best way to protect Gark is to disguise him in a cat onesie. And thankfully, Max's owner, Betty, is a little short-sighted and can't quite tell the difference. So I'm going to show you the opening credits and then a little scene where Betty opens up the internet for the first time, and Max explains to Gark what the internet is. So here's a little bit of Counterfeit Cat. Thanks. We love that show. It's coming out this spring, launching in the UK first, and then rolling out across the world, actually. So what's next? So we just started production on a new live-action series outside of Belfast, not too far from here. And it's a format that we've never done before. It's a musical series. We're really excited about that. At any time, we have about 7 to 8 different series in development and production. All over the world, but primarily for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and primarily working with European production companies. So to conclude, I have to say I feel incredibly lucky with the career that I've had. I've had incredible mentors, teams to support me, people to work with, and honestly, nothing that I've done is a solo show. It's everything I have done is really down to working with people, and it's been just a great ride so far, and I'm hopeful it'll continue for a long time. I'm incredibly thankful to all of them. I've made lots of mistakes, as you can imagine, and I've learned from hopefully most of them. But that's how you grow. So I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you very much for having me here. Any questions? Oh, come on. None? Oh, there we go. There we go.
My name is Eleanor from IEGT. I wanted to ask a question about Miraculous Ladybug and how it's a 3D animated series, but it's very similar to kind of the anime kind of storytelling in a way. And did you guys kind of have a struggle to kind of pick that up and advertise it and distribute it and everything?
No, actually, we were really struck by the team had done an animation trailer, which was really high quality, and we were really impressed by that production when we first saw it. We picked it up straight away, and it's been a great collaboration with the companies behind it, between Zagtoon, Toei, and we've been seeing great success with it. Actually, we launched it in the UK. On the Disney Channel in the UK, and Disney Channel in the UK generally, up until that point, had really been focused on live-action series, and most of the animation was sitting on Disney XD. And Miraculous rose up to be a top 5 show within the first week. And our partners at Sky have featured it on their VOD platform, and the reason why they actually chose to do it was because the imagery was so strong and powerful. So we're thrilled with how it's working. We're thrilled with how it looks. We're definitely interested in exploring more. It's a really strong show for us, and it's just beginning to roll out across our markets. It's already launched on free TV in France. It's done amazing. Launched in Korea, done amazing. So we're thrilled with it. Oh, there's one over there, one over there.
How are things? I'm Niall, I'm from IADT. I was just wondering, with shows that are more mini-series oriented, like Over the Garden Wall for Cartoon Network and shows like that, a lot of effort has to go into it, but because it's short, like limited runs, it can be more experimental. Do you think that that's something that will be more prevalent, or is it too much effort for too little of a result?
Well, where we are exploring on that area is going shorter and going with real short form. So we actually have launched a program to explore digital shorts. So we've gone out to about 10 different production companies and creators in Europe to create shorts for us that we'll be talking a little bit more about in the months to come. So that for us is a great way to incubate new talent and to create new relationships and not have a big investment. Because it takes a long time to, as you all very well know, it takes a long time to get animation through the pipeline, and we were looking to see quickly some new ideas, some new concepts, and so that will be rolling out in the next couple months. So that's where we look to go in terms of that kind of investment. Oh, well, there was I don't know. One more.
Hi, it's Lorna from Ballyferma. I was just wondering, since you cover so many regions, like from the United States, Ireland, UK, and Middle East, does the content in the cartoons differ or change over any of the platforms? Since you're from so many different regions, so many different kinds of kids, like how do you deal with like changing content, or do you at all?
We aim to create content that works across the board, and we like to think that we can create content that works on a universal basis. Particularly in animation, it's really a lot easier to do that than on the live action side. On the live action side, when you have real people, it is sometimes more difficult, and you have people speaking a language, you have challenges creating that connection with your audience sometimes in some of the markets. When then you have animation and you can dub the lip flap pretty easily, you can create universal characters that can appeal across the board. Of course, there's some markets that are more sensitive to certain areas of standards and practices, so we have to be conscious of that. But we also have the Disney brand name that we're concerned about. So, we're never going to do anything that's going to be overly edgy or, push the boundaries in a way that wouldn't be appropriate for kids and families and for the Disney brand. So there's a lot of synchronicity across multiple markets and the Disney brand. So we don't really have that challenge as much as you'd think. Great. All right. Thank you very much.